Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's CUGC webinar. We are going to be talking about Citrix Workspace Hub, and I know a lot of people are very excited about this topic, so I won't hold things up too long. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. We are recording this session today, so you will receive a recording link in email afterwards. And yeah, so let me get right to it. So we have with us today Ingmar Verheij. He's the Technical Marketing Manager at Citrix. He also helped start our Dutch CUGC group and has been involved with us for a while. So I'm happy to have him here today. And also with him is Gunnar Berger. He's the CTO of Desktops and Applications at Citrix, and he will be on hand while Ingmar is presenting. He's going to be available for questions and all that good stuff. Before we get started, I want to introduce our moderator today. She is a leader of our Tampa CUGC group. She is a Women in Tech mentor for CUGC, and she is a CTP. And Joe Harder, would you like to say hello really quickly?
Hi, everybody. I think that you'll be really excited about this topic. I know I have just received my unit and I haven't even plugged it in yet. So I personally am very anxious to learn more about Citrix Workspace Hub and the dual monitor capabilities and Citrix Casting and all that. But I'm not going to steal any of Ingmar's thunder, so I will let Ingmar go ahead and get started. But I do want to remind you to put your questions in the question box. We will address those at certain intervals throughout the session. So let's get it started.
All right, so hey everyone, glad to see there's so much interest in the Workspace Hub. Same here. The reason I'm doing this session is because I'm really excited about Citrix Workspace Hub. So therefore, the title, in-depth exploration, basically meaning I really wanted to know what are the inner works and how does it work? What is the Citrix Workspace Hub? If you get one, what can you do with it? How does it work? What are the details? So without further ado, let me tell you what the topic is for today, what I'll be covering or try to be covering today. First of all, I'm going to start with a brief introduction, so you know where we're coming from, what's the background, and then we'll do a deep dive into, first and foremost, Citrix Casting, which is the most exciting part of the Workspace Hub to me. The secondary display adapter, which is, well, I'd say an essential piece of this device. And then we'll be covering briefly the HDX real-time media optimization, so for your Skype meetings, and we're covering management, of course. And there are quite some tips, along the way. I'll be providing quite some tips. Being in the trenches, well, seen a bit, and hopefully that would help you successfully use a Citrix Workspace Hub in your organization's environment. So it was Synergy 2015. This was the first time that Citrix talked about the Citrix Workspace Hub. So it was Mark Templeton and Chris Fleck on stage, who had some small device in his hand, and they walked up to a meeting room, and lots of magic happened. And that was, the Citrix Workspace Hub. It was a small device being built by Citrix. It had a VGA output. It had a HDMI output, which was actually interestingly enough, male and female. It features dual Bluetooth, dual Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, came never to market, and I guess that for obvious reasons. Citrix is not a hardware company. We're not a hardware builder, even though Citrix, we sell NetScaler software. So we quickly moved on to the Nexus player, which runs Android applications. So there's a great device. Building out the capabilities we showed out first, testing it at different variety of customers, seeing what works for you and when is it beneficial for you. So this was late 2015. 2016 was actually the introduction of the Citrix HDX Ready Pi. I was lucky enough to be at Synergy at the demo booth showing the Workspace Hub, and there was a huge interest. So it was really good momentum there. And this was basically a low-cost, high-performance HDX client. So it's a thin client, which is basically an alternative for other thin clients. Now, moving further, 2017, we basically did a lot of evolution. So we shifted from thin links into Stratodesk as a supplier and our partner, we added N Computing as a hardware vendor, which is really good addition. Support from Privada One Sign came on, and jumping forward to this year, this is basically where the Citrix Workspace Hub came to life, right? So we did a rebrand. HDX Ready Pi is now called the Citrix Ready Workspace Hub, and main reason for that is we introduced Citrix Casting. It's no longer just a thin client; it features way more capabilities. So it has a background of a few years, and I'm really glad that Gunnar Berger was able to join us today, because Gunnar is the one who made sure that we reach GA general availability at Synergy this year. So what do you get? I've been meeting customers for the last years, talking about formerly the HDX Ready Pi, now the Citrix Ready Workspace Hub, saying it's roughly $99. What do I get? First question I get is, so you say it's based on a Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi, it only cost me 35 euros or $35. Why is it so expensive? Which is fun, because any other thin client will set you back $300, $400. So let me explain. First of all, you get a case. So there's a casing around your device. ViewSonic actually brings you a mounting plate for your screen. There's a Kensington lock. It's all hardened, so it's it features a case, of course. There's a computer inside, and as mentioned, it's a Raspberry Pi. Great thing about the Raspberry Pi, it's not only used for do your own projects or for your home cinema center. It's a very powerful platform, which not only features things like GPIO pins, but also a very fast processor and an H.264 encoding and decoder. Now, this is interesting because, as you know, the HDX protocol uses H.264 as well. So this is also my first tip. If you're going to use this device, do set it to an H.264 encoder. Even though thin wire is great, for the Workspace Hub, it's definitely optimized for H.264. Now, it features, some HDMI, 1080p. 1080p is the maximum. It can do up to 60 frames, so that's impressive for such a small device. It has Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, everything. Later on this year, we saw the introduction of a new Raspberry Pi, the Model B Plus. It's not yet available from N Computing or ViewSonic, and I'm not sure when that's going to happen. But the interesting changes are not so much, it's faster. It has an Ethernet gigabit port, which is power over Ethernet capable. Now that's going to be interesting, because now you need to power it over USB. Power over Ethernet will be fun. But also the second line, or the one mentioning Wi-Fi, is interesting, because as you can see, the current model only supports 2.4 gigahertz for Wi-Fi, whereas the new one also supports 5 gigahertz. So if you're going to use this in your enterprise today, you have a requirement for a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi network. All right. So part of the package as well, there's a micro SD card in there. You can't access it. You shouldn't access it. So these details are just for fun, basically. And same goes for the power adapter. It's in the box. You'll get it, and that's great. And of course, part of this $99-ish is someone assembles it for you. So if you want to do this on your own, there's all these costs which you should consider, and then this is a very, very good price. Also, part of this $99 is a big software stack. So of course it runs on Linux, and you don't have to do that, because that's why we partnered with Stratadisk. They supply us with NoTouchOS, which they build and maintain. So it's already a very mature platform, and it's manageable by either Citrix Endpoint Management or No Touch Center, which they provide. And later on in the session, I will cover it a bit more in depth. And they support Imprivata, Caradigm, and many other partners around us. So Citrix, we provided the receiver. This is basically the Linux receiver, but we had to optimize it for the processor, which is in a Raspberry Pi. It's not an x86, but it's an ARM processor. So slightly optimized. We definitely optimized it for HDX. It's not a default receiver. So as you have seen probably in Synergy or other environments, it's really fast. I was really impressed by it. Also optimized is the real-time optimization pack. So if you want to run Skype, if you want to run a webcam or a video stream, you need to have HDX real-time optimization pack. Also ported from the Linux, and we are now depending on different libraries, and that might have some small changes or small challenges, but overall you can really run Skype meetings really well. And then the last one, Citrix Casting. This is the most exciting feature. This is something which no one else in the industry has. Okay, this is something which no other thin client vendor can provide you. It's what sets this device apart from being a thin client. And it is basically an umbrella called Citrix Casting, and there are two modes of operation: screen casting or session roaming. And I will cover them both in detail in this session. Last but not least, Microsoft. We included the Azure IoT stack in here. So this is going to be an IoT edge device. There are already integrations with triggers, and there's more coming, and that's all for future. So Citrix Casting, I want to show you how it works, and I'm going to do this using a demo and an example. Demo if it actually works, and we all know how demos work if we want it to work. So for that, you need to understand that Citrix Casting has two working modes: screen casting and session roaming. They're different, but they're the same. They're different because it's give you a different result, and we can trigger them in two different ways. We can trigger them using a QR code or using proximity. So the first demo, which I'm going to show you, is screencasting. Oh, and there you go. There's no screencasting because PowerPoint just crashed. Let me reopen that. So the first demo, which I'm going to show you, is screencasting using a QR code. And screencasting, imagine you've been on holiday and we've got great pictures of your family in your phone or of your holiday. And you want to show it to a bigger audience. So your family or your friends coming over, they want to see this picture. What do? You cast it to the big screen. All right. Now, same thing in the office. You've been working on a design or a presentation or perhaps a spreadsheet with financials, and you want to show this to your boss, right? You want to impress him or at least show this that you are really worth the money. But he's super busy. So what do? You take your tablet, your iPad or your Android tablet, and you've got your VDI session running. It's a great feature we've been having for many years. So you walk up to him and say, "Hey, boss, have you seen this?" They're like, "All right, this is interesting. Show it on the big screen." So you go to his office and you show it over there. So in his office is a workspace hub. Basically, you attach it at the back of a screen, and you can show a browser saying, "Welcome to Office of Mr. X. Use this Wi-Fi and you can connect to us." What you can see here is my workspace hub, and I've configured it to casting. I can also configure it to roaming. In my example, it's set to casting, and I am running my VDI session on the tablet, which is sitting here right next to me. And all I have to do is in this VDI session, which unfortunately I can't show you here, is scan the QR code. And what you will see is that automatically the content of my tablet is now being casted onto the big screen, right? So I just showed my manager or my boss in the hallway showing my great presentation or my great design, walked up to him and I can show him. So this is very easy for those people who are roaming around, roaming from A to B, and quickly want to show something on a big screen, like in a meeting room or something else. And when I'm done, all I have to do is take it back, basically swiping it back to my tablet, and that session is back again there. So it's really easy. It's just showing a QR code that will trigger a casting the screen. So the other one is session roaming with proximity, which is not something I will show on the screen right here, but I'll give it in an example. So the demo you just saw was me running my HDX, basically my Win 10 session running on my tablet, right? So it's got an HDX session running, and there's a workspace hub sitting next to me, and it's shouting, "Hey, I'm an open workstation. I'm available." All right, and there's a QR code where the address is in. So I scanned the QR code and said, "Hey, I'm gonna cast my screen over to you." And what happens is that my tablet my receiver will connect to the Workspace Hub, and the content is now visible on the big screen. And of course, the Workspace Hub is no longer available, and it's basically shouting out in the open air like, hey, you know what, I'm occupied. And whenever I'm done casting, I'll disconnect it and everything will be set to what it was. So a bit more in detail. QR code, it actually contains the IP address of the Workspace Hub. That allows the receiver on your phone or your tablet where it needs to connect to, right? So it knows where it is. So if we look at this in a diagram, the Citrix receiver has a connection with this VDA. So these ports, you know, right? 4094 ICA or 443 for SSL. We then do a HTTP post to the Workspace Hub saying, hey, you know what, there's a session coming. What you can see here is that there is a web service running on the Workspace Hub, and that runs on port 5555, 5 times 5. It's HTTP, all right? And I'll get back to that one. So we do a post saying, you know, there's a session coming, be ready. Then the receiver will actually do a trigger saying, hey, I'm connecting, I'm making a session. And this trigger is interesting because you can do workspace automation here. So whenever I make a connection to this specific Workspace Hub, I can automate stuff. So that means setting the default printer, which is fun, but we probably have a different solution. But we can also send a message on Slack saying, Ingmar is just sitting down in the office on the 5th floor. If you're looking for him, this is where you can find him. Then the receiver will set up a video stream. So on port 4094, this is not configurable. So this is just 4094 to the Workspace Hub. So again, receiver is having the session, right? He's running the port 443 or whatever the HX session is running. Since my tablet is now a trackpad, that requires a different port. So if you're going to run this in your environment, do know that you need port 55555, you now need 4094 and 8500. So then screen is casted onto the big screen and it's unavailable. If you take it back, same thing. We're going to do another trigger, a workflow trigger saying I'm not disconnected, and we're done. All right. So screencasting with QR code, very important. The Workspace Hub does not host a Citrix receiver. Your phone or your tablet does. As a result, because it's not running the receiver, you do not have the ability to run it on a dual monitor or use the HX real-time optimization. Today, it is limited to a full H.264 stream. So that means you need to set it to use the entire screen. Selective H.264, ThinWire Plus, EDT, all the adaptive protocols, they're coming, but for today, this is the way it is. Really recommend you use the remote display analyzer. It's a community tool to verify that you set it correct in a policy. And if you haven't set it correctly, you can use that tool in the session to change it. So highly recommend using that tool. Posting to a web service, as I did, I used to do it to Octoblue or Azure IoT platform. You can do it. It's fun to play around with. I think you can do great stuff, but it is optional. Now, very important, the web server running on port 5555, it's HTTP, meaning it's non-secure. You can configure it to use HTTPS, a secure port. Please do so. If you're testing, if you are doing a trial, don't bother, but there's data flowing over there, right? So really, really important. Let me quickly take a break and see if there are any questions which have been popped in. Joe, did you get any question?
We got a lot of questions, so let me jump into those. First question, how is the QR code generated?
That's a good question. So the QR code that you see, it hosts IP address. It's actually being generated by an online service, and that's from Google. So that's also a good tip as well. Make sure the device is connected to the internet, because if there's no internet connection, you won't see the QR code.
Okay. And how do you update receiver to later versions? So as receivers updated.
Sure.
I asked a follow-up question on that one. I wasn't sure if that question was referring to receiver on the Workspace Hub or the other receivers, but Ingmar, you can answer it.
Okay, sure. So, NoTouchOS is provided by Stratadesk, and NoTouchOS, the entire package contains a Citrix receiver. So what will happen is that we Citrix, we provide all the vendors, including Stratadesk, we will provide them with the latest versions of receiver. And Stratadesk in its turn, they will include it into their build. So they are the one who's going to provide this to you. There's no need to set something up other than a management. And Gunnar, perhaps, shall we take this later when we talk about management, or do you want to address this right now?
What do you want me to answer about management?
What we can do in OS distribution, but I guess let's park this for management. Let's take it there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say that the Workspace Hub is designed to be an evergreen operating system. So, but yeah, we can you can manage it through multiple management consoles, including Zen Mobile, or what do we call it now?
Citrix Endpoint Management.
Yeah, Endpoint Management.
Right.
So yeah, that's how you handle the operating of the devices and just general management of the devices.
Cool.
Okay, let's do one more. With session roaming, do you have to have a session open prior to walking up to the Workspace Hub, or will it open one for you?
Good question. Oh, did you want to take that one, Gunnar?
Yeah, I answered that one already. So again, the two modes are session roaming and screen casting. Roaming is just a token, so you don't have to have your session up. You do have to authenticate at some point in time prior, but that does not mean you have to actually log in. When we're talking about authentication, I mean, it's like on your phone, you're just logging in to receiver on the phone. So depending on how your phone's set up, that could just be a fingerprint. So you have to authenticate, but then as that token is authenticated on your phone, as you just approach a Workspace Hub, it automatically logs in. Screencasting a little bit different, right? You're actually saying, I want the thing I'm looking at right now to show up over here on the Workspace Hub. So with screencasting, then you would by default have to already have the session up and running.
That's it. And I guess that's also a good segue into the next mode of operation for casting. We just showed screencasting with the QR code. What about session roaming? And I used a different trigger straight away, so using proximity. And as Gunnar just told us, right, it's a different way of using casting. All you have to be is authenticated on your device. And this screen, I used the phone. Basically, I've been authenticated, and so there's a token on my phone. Again, Workspace Hub is saying I'm an open workstation. You can sit here. So what I do when I go to the office at Citrix Amsterdam, that we have hot desks. All we have is a screen and some keyboard and mouse. There's no PC. There's nothing. So 5 desks in a row. All I have to do is come there with my phone and be authenticated, and then it's basically broadcasting I'm an open workstation. So I come close. I come in proximity, and my phone will then transfer its token, so it's authenticated token to the Workspace Hub, and then the Workspace Hub will set up the session. So now the Workspace Hub is running the receiver. He is running the session. And again, it's saying I'm no longer open, I'm occupied. Then when I'm done, I'm going for lunch or I'm going for a meeting, I'm out of range, I'm no longer in close proximity. That means I'm going to close the session. So I'll send a notification to the Workspace Hub and say, please stop having that session because I'm no longer there. So there's no reason for that session to be active. So session roaming is more an authentication mechanism, whereas with casting, screencasting, you are actually having a session on your phone or your tablet. So again, I want to address this in a bit more detail, but before I can do that, let me give you a quick primer on iBeacons, because we're using iBeacons. Bluetooth Low Energy was introduced with Bluetooth 4, which is more or less the same as Bluetooth Classic, but it's a different type of Bluetooth. Interestingly, it lives in the same 2.4 gigahertz band as your Wi-Fi does. And there are many more other services running in this 2.4 gigahertz. So this BLE beacon is actually being advertised on 3 separate channels, so that if there's something blocked or there's something just too busy, then you probably will get this advertisement on the other channel. So it will send out 3 times in random interval, and it's being broadcasted in the air. iBeacon is an Apple's implementation of BLE beacons. So we are using iBeacons, so the Apple implementation, simply because it gives us a UID, a major, a minor, and TX power is interesting as well. So if you would have a Workspace Hub running or sitting next to you, and you would open a beacon scanner, this is what you would see, right? So there's which seems to be a random UID, a major reminder, and you see an RSSI. Now, UID, major reminder, I will get back to. RSSI is what gives us the ability to do proximity. It's the received signal strength indicator. So it indicates, what power level we're measuring. So what gives us is by setting the entry and exit value in the receiver, we know when you are in close proximity or when you are far away. Now, I found out, through research and also by using it, that each vendor has the ability to change the implementation, which is well, I haven't seen it much, but it can vary. With iOS, you don't have the problem because Apple also builds the hardware. With Android, you are depending on the hardware vendor. Usually the same, but it's something to consider. Also, when there's noise on the same frequency, Wi-Fi and other Bluetooth devices live in the same frequency, that can have an impact on the signal strength. So if it's really crowded, then you need more power to transfer the same signal strength. So if you are in a very crowded office, then you probably need to change the values compared to a very empty space. Also, the use case varies. If you are in a meeting room, you probably want to have a very large range, right? So you can set an entry and exit value. So when you are in a meeting room, that's enough range to trigger this session roaming. When you are in a hot desk, you want to have a short range. Only when you are in, I don't know, a few feet, then we should trigger this session roaming. So do you understand that this is Bluetooth? You're in the same band as your Wi-Fi connection is. So what happens? What you see in the top right is the iBeacon which we're broadcasting. The UID, if we translate that, that's basically just hexadecimal to a string. It says Citrix Hub and something else. So let's just say Citrix Hub. Every Citrix Workspace Hub is broadcasting this. The major and the minor is actually a formula which leads into the IP address of this device. So it's broadcasting, I am a Workspace Hub, and this is the IP address where you can reach me. So whenever a phone or tablet comes in proximity, he knows which device he should trigger. So what happens? This token which we're sending is actually an ICA file. And of course, the ICA file has the authenticated beacon token in there. Sorry. So as you can see here, same web service, 5555 HTTP. So we're sending unencrypted an ICA file. Again, I highly recommend, if you're using this in productions, set this to an SSL session. After we've sent this, the Workspace Hub will set up the session. So it will set up the HDX session, and it changed the major of your iBeacon. It's now set to 0, which means it's broadcasting, I am unavailable. I'm no longer available for you as a Workspace Hub. Also, if you want to, what's the IP address? There's no way to find out. So then receiver, every 5 to 15 seconds, it will ask, are you still running? So it's doing a health check. And whenever we are out of range, so out of the proximity that we configured, the exit entry, we will actually send another post saying, please stop running this session. So it's the receiver running on the phone or the tablet which will initiate this disconnect. And then then PowerPoint is crashing again. I'm so unlucky today. So really important is that there are 2 modes of operation, screen casting and session roaming, and both you can use trigger with QR code or proximity, which is an iBeacon. All right. So another good thing to know is, because the Workspace Hub is running the receiver, you do get dual monitoring. You do get the HDX real-time optimization. So it's a full-blown session. It's just a token which we send. Again, 2.4 gigahertz. It's crowded. All right. So be mindful about that. And well, port 5555. I can't stress it enough. Please set it to the secure port, because the ICA file sends a JSON. Any clever guy can sniff that. All right, it's easy. So how do you configure it? You configure it to use Workspace Hub, basically putting it in, instead of a normal storefront session into Workspace Hub. And I think we updated the visuals already, but let's just assume this is the way. The web page you just saw a normal web page. It's something you can configure. So it's, if you have multiple pages, you will get arrows. It's a carousel. Depending on your use case, you set it to an instruction page, like in a meeting room, like, hey, please connect to this guest Wi-Fi. Then you will find these and this software or your company logo. If you are using it in a hot desking environment, you probably want to show the storefront page or your workspace page, like, hey, log in here and take it from there. Either way, if you get it out of the box, it will show a nice Citrix background. This is the Citrix Rally office, Citrix Rally office. If you don't want that, start with NOBG and then, comma separated all the URLs that you want to show. You can use an advanced QR code instead of a simple, so you can get an array of multiple addresses. And you, of course, can configure the work mode. So you set it to either session roaming or screencasting. It's up to you how you want to use this device. A little bit below, workspace workflow triggers. So on connect and disconnect, trigger a web service, which could be an IT platform or whatever you want to use. And the last part, please configure it to use SSL. Okay, this is where you say don't use port 5555, but well, 5556, whatever you want to use. And again, reminder, if you have firewalls in place, do open it. Otherwise, this is not going to work. Okay. Joe, did you get any questions in, or Gunnar?
Again, we're getting lots of questions. First question, what platforms are supported?
So today, first release, Synergy, we announced quite a bit, and we already said there, everything we announced will be available within the next 90 days. I'm pretty sure that the Citrix receiver for Android is already released. Next on the roadmap is iOS. I'm not sure which quarter that's going to be, but personally, I hope it's going to be Q3, Q4. I'm not sure, but pretty sure that's the next one. And Gunnar, do you have anything to add on other platforms that we can share already? Gunnar is on mute. All right, so okay.
Double muted. I was just going to say no. I mean, we have legal requirements on what we can actually say on that front, but obviously we've stated at Synergy that Windows, OS X, iOS are coming.
Cool.
Okay, next question. So if I approach Workspace Hub with Proximity and my session is already running on a tablet, Proximity will take over this session to the Workspace Hub. And then when leaving the room, my tablet takes back the session.
So first part, yes, definitely. That's session roaming at its best. You have a session running. The token will basically take over that session. You're initiating a new session on the Workspace Hub. So your session is then at the Workspace Hub. If you leave, so you're out of proximity. If you have screencasting, it will definitely go back to your tablet. Okay, because it's back where you were. If you've configured it to session roaming, so now handing over your token, then it would just disconnect it.
Okay. Can Workspace Hub be configured to allow username password login as well as proximity login?
Yes. So if you show a web page, your default storefront or whatever you want to show there, your Netscaler Unified Gateway, just use username password.
Okay. Is the device a VDA compliant device? I'm not sure if we understand that question.
I do not understand the question.
I didn't understand the question.
Okay. All right. And End Computing and StrataDesk are telling us that seamless sessions should work with the secondary screen, but we have not seen it work.
Yeah, I just answered that one. I mean, I have to talk kind of from personal experience here. These things are designed for full screen VDI desktop. They're not designed for running multiple sessions, that kind of stuff. I mean, you got to understand like what's going on under the hood on these things. It's not really using the CPU of the Pi that much. It's using H.264 decoder. which is a separate piece of silicon on the Raspberry Pi. That's how we can get 1080p on two screens. You know, the secondary screen being a Pi 0. This is a very, very low-powered computer. So when you start saying, hey, I want to do this, that, and the other, while technically it might be feasible, I just can't possibly recommend something like that, especially dual screen. I just don't think at all work on these dual screen, because your mouse, as weird as this is to think about it, your mouse is not on the secondary screen in the way that a traditional screen would work. It only works on the secondary screen once a Citrix session has occurred. So for that specific question, I just don't think there's any possible way you could actually do seamless. It's designed for dual screen, full screen VDI. If you don't do that, I just don't think it's going to be a good client for you. And we have plenty of other, I mean, there's plenty of clients out there in the market, right? Workspace Hub's not the only one. For that type of experience, I would not recommend this device.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. There's still more questions, and hopefully we can get to them at the end, but I know you've got a lot more to cover.
Yes, a lot of content. So already good segue by Gunnar. Dual monitor. You know, being a Raspberry Pi, it only has one HDMI output, right? So it's a great device, but single HDMI, 1080p, 60 frames. So of course you want to use secondary screen because that makes sense in most setups. So what we built is what we call the secondary display adapter, which is indeed based on a Raspberry Pi 0. You should see a Citrix logo when you boot this up. Okay, so a secondary display adapter has only one micro USB. So how do we address this? And it's also interesting to know what the inner works are. Okay, so for that, again, I'm going to do a small primer on USB. And I can imagine you thinking like, all right, Ingmar, I know USB. It's been around for a while. And of course, you know, a USB. Each host acts as a master device, whereas the device acts as a slave. So a traditional master-slave relation. And it's one or the other. Okay, that's how USB was designed. So if I give an example, if you want to use Ethernet over USB, then your computer is the master and Ethernet is the slave, right? So a network. If you go for printing, same thing, your computer is the master, the printer is the slave. If I want to access files from a flash drive, again, computer is the master, you see the pattern here. But what if I want to use the same flash drive in a printer, okay? So this is where basically the challenge came, like, all right, I've been set up to be a master, I've been set up to be a slave, but I have to be a master. So that's basically introduced us to USB on the go, because USB on the go is an evolution of USB where devices are allowed to negotiate the rule. Okay, so there's a negotiation between, am I going to be the master or will you? And then a printer can actually access a flash drive, which is great. Do you know that for USB on the go, you need a special cable? It's the OTG cable, all right? So on the go. So why is this important for this scenario? Simple, because we're using USB to plug into the Workspace Hub, okay? This is an OTG cable. And when that happens, the secondary display adapter is no longer a USB master, but a slave. And in the background, basically network is being set up, okay? So it's presented as an Ethernet adapter using all the technical bits and bytes you see here. They now have a full-blown connection between each other, and we can transfer data. So if you want to see this under the cover, and you might want to, because it's not going to work, might not work if you don't use the right cable or other details, just run ls-usb and ifconfig, and you will see, all right, these are the USB devices present today. Okay, it's normal USB hub and standard devices which are present, and you have a local loopback adapter, Ethernet, and Wi-Fi, as any device has. Now, if I plug in the secondary display adapter, you can see that using the dmessage command that there's a new high-speed USB device, which is identified as a network adapter. If I run the same commands again, all right, there's a new network adapter and a new network has been formed. And by the way, I'm running this on the Workspace Hub, all right? Why is this important? Well, if you've set this up, you might need to troubleshoot it. First, configure it. Hardware rendering, yes, of course. You know, it has silicon to do H.264 encoding and decoding. Of course, we use it for decoding of H.264. Do know currently there's a known issue that if you want to run your Skype video, basically, on a secondary screen, doesn't work, right? You need to disable hardware rendering. I know it's temporarily, we'll fix it today. If you want to use it, please do so. Please change this feature. Of course, you need to configure where it is physically. What's the relative position from the primary screen? So is it left or right? And if you have different resolutions, how are you going to align it? It's all in the details. So things to remember. If you plug it in, it should show you the Citrix logo. If it doesn't, you did something wrong. It's only supported as a secondary screen, so there's no third or fourth or whatever. It's 2 screens, so we doubled. The primary screen is always the main display, so your Workspace Hub will be the primary one. And just like casting, it requires a full H.264 encoder, so the 4 entire screen. Okay, you can use the remote display analyzer to check and set it if you need to. Something which I noticed myself is, for one, I used the wrong cable. I didn't use the O2G cable because I wanted to have a longer one. That's not going to work. Okay, if you use the demessage command, you will get errors. And also very important, use the supplied power adapter. I know that the Workspace Hub can power it as well. It's not enough power. So if you are not using the external power adapter that's being supplied, you will see something like under voltage detected, and it's not going to work. I know it's suboptimal. You might want to use the single cable, but this is the way it is. All right, HDMI just requires a lot of power to show it on the screen. Good thing is, it's hot pluggable, so you can just add and remove a secondary screen. And as said, HDX Real-Time Optimization Pack and the video on the secondary screen currently is an issue. We will address it for today. Did you get any questions in before we go to the next subject?
Just a couple. So one thing that I do want to point out to everyone that I personally experienced is I thought when I took the Workspace Hub out of the box that I would have that secondary cable in there. It is not included, and that is a separate item that needs to be ordered. So don't want anybody else to experience that same level of disappointment that you go to connect everything and, ooh, where is it?
And to be clear, it's not a cable. All right, that's kind of a misconception. It's another Raspberry Pi, and it's daisy chained to the first one. So I get that. I've heard that multiple times that people are asking about where's the cable. Like, it's not a cable. It actually looks identical to the Raspberry Pi, except the ports are a little bit different. So yeah, it's a secondary purchase. I know N Computing sells it because I have one in my office right now. I'm not sure if ViewSonic has got theirs on the market yet, but N Computing definitely has it, and it's called the SDA. So if you're calling about it, it's like $50 or something, and it's called the SDA.
So good point. And the cable I was referring to is the cable which should be supplied with the secondary display adapter. So for the daisy chain, the cable that they provide with your secondary display adapter, the daisy chain cable is a small USB cable. That's an ODG cable.
Micro USB to USB-C cable. Same thing I charge your phone with.
Yes.
Okay. And just the question, talk about the performance of the secondary screen.
So if it's been set up for H.264, and of course for the secondary screen you need to, it's really good. Of course it's subjective, but it's because it features H.264 decoder, so it's got a silicon on the chip. It's got an Ethernet connection between the two. You will get, let's say, native performance. I've seen HD videos being played on the primary screen and the secondary screen, dragging it from left to the right. Great performance.
Okay. All right, so let's keep going. We've only got 15 minutes left, and I know you've got a lot more to cover.
Yes. All right. So HDX Real-Time Optimization Pack. I'm going to be short here. We know why we need it. We don't want a hairpinning. If you go into your session and you do the about, you should see that there's a real-time connector and there's a real-time media engine. And you can see, it's a certain version that runs Linux, and it's just like any other platform. Again, dual monitor currently does not support video overlay, so should disable the encoding because we had to port the libraries to a different processor. Today we only support VGA quality, not 1080p for your webcam, if you're lucky enough to have a 1080p webcam. Of course, only available in session. So that means if you log in by yourself or with session roaming, Citrix Casting, of course, we don't. Small details, if your webcam is not recognized by the receiver, then it will use USB redirection. It's going to be visible in your session. You can change that, right? It's just a configuration. So if you have a more specific webcam than just like on your Windows or other platform, this is something you can configure. So management, I think this is very important that, having a thin client, or in this case, a Workspace Hub, is great. I think it's a great option if you are running thin clients. Might not be the right fit for all your users, but if you're buying thin clients, consider it. And of course, you need to be able to manage it. All right, central management is key if you have an enterprise solution. So today, you can use either Citrix Endpoint Management, which of course is based on Zen Mobile, which is a cloud service. Okay. Because you're using endpoint management, you can configure and manage all your devices from the same single pane of glass. So therefore, I would recommend it. Also, because it only shows the configuration that you need, right? Only the relevant configuration for this device. You can keep the device updated with the latest features and patches. Simple, because we give you the ability to patch it, configure the configurations for whatever is needed. You can actually deploy an application, but I won't go too much into detail, and do the security actions like do normal MDM stuff, right? So full wipes, restarting, all the things you want to do. If you want to have access to all the thousands of features that you can configure on this device, then deploy the Strata Desk No Touch Management. Okay, you can deploy it using a virtual appliance, so they supply a virtual appliance, or you can run it in Windows. And with that, you can do, I don't know, everything. There are literally just thousands of things you can configure there. There are also, let's just say, backdoors. Okay, out of the box, there is a web page which you can access. So if you go to the IP address of this device, it will show you the system configuration, which is available through HTTP and HTTPS. By default, it's non-secure. Okay, so again, you might want to change this. For testing, it's great. It helped me out a lot, having this backdoor. Do you know it exists? Same goes for secure shell. I normally run a PuTTY somewhere, SSH into it, especially when you're troubleshooting. Really valuable, as you've seen with dual monitor or other stuff. If you want to see log files or something, it's really great. There is a great management ability to manage it, but again, configure it to secure or close it down if you don't want this to be open. You don't want to be that guy who leaves non-secure services running on a device where your management is running, where your employees are using it. So Citrix Endpoint Management, it's based on Citrix Zen Mobile Unified Endpoint Management. And out of the box, every Workspace Hub is configured to communicate with the URL provided. All right, so it's a web service which we actually run in Microsoft Azure, and it just sits there. All right, it uses a secure WebSocket, so it's all secured, but it sits there waiting. It's in a queue. All Workspace Hubs, if they can reach the internet, they're sitting there waiting on a queue until you, as an admin, take ownership of the device. You can associate it with your organization, with your Citrix Endpoint Management instance. So you can do that with one device, but of course, you can do bulk enrollment. So basically, whitelisting this device for your environment, and then keep it updated, configure it, as we just mentioned. This is by far the easiest way of doing it. Okay, it's set up by default. All you have to know is, how do I embrace it or adopt it in my organization? So for that, you go to Citrix Endpoint Management. On the top, you have Manage. Go to Devices, and then there's a Device Whitelist button. If you click on Add, you can either import and choose a CSV file, which you can download, so you can just fill it, or you go to a manual. Choose the device platform, which is Workspace Hub. Device ID type is the MAC address. You can only add it by MAC address. All right. MAC address is easy because it's on the bottom of the device. Actually, it's on the latest end computing that I got. I actually got a QR code on there, so you can just scan it. So that's really easy. They all start with the same B827 because Ethernet adapter is from Raspberry Pi. But of course, you probably can just extract this from your DHCP server or your supplier where you buy it. I assume you're going to buy it in bulk of 50, 100, or even more. They will supply you with, hey, these are the MAC addresses of the devices you just bought. All right. Then associate a user, because this is the service account which you will use for enrollment, policy pushing, and applying all the security actions. Okay. That's it. That's all you have to do. One thing, and I found this out while I was building this session, doing this in-depth exploration. If it doesn't work, hit Ctrl-Alt-S on your screen. All right. If you do so, you will see this. First of all, partially the background of Citrix Rally. By far the best Citrix office I've ever been, but it's irrelevant for today. It will show you the host name, MAC addresses, IP addresses, versions, geeky stuff, but really, really valuable if you are troubleshooting stuff. Okay. So one thing I found out is it said to me, failed to invoke, method announced, yada yada. It says mkey does not have tenant information. So when you enroll this device, whether that's to the Strata Desk No-Touch Center or the Citrix Endpoint Management, it will do a negotiation and will set up an mkey. An mkey is the key which is the synchronous key that we use to secure the communication between the device and the management instance. It's unique per device, and it is stored on the device. Meaning, if you initially managed it with No-Touch Center and you move it to Zen Mobile, it doesn't work because there's already an M key, which is wrong. All right, you need to clean it up. You need to remove it. So there's a file, pre-shared key. Delete it if you had it centrally managed before, and move it back. Same thing if you go from Zen Mobile to No-Touch Center, you will probably run into this. It's very easy, just clean up the file and you're good to go. All right. I'm not sure on this one. Let's skip this. I'm not sure. So how do you get it? When are you getting these great features? First of all, the Workspace Hub, basically, if you want to use this as a thin client, every SKU will get you the Workspace Hub as a thin client. So that means Skype for business optimization, dual monitor, device management, everything is just available out of the box. If you want to have Citrix Casting, then you need a Platinum license. So it's part of the Platinum SKU or the Workspace Premium. Workspace Premium will also get you Citrix Endpoint Management. So, working at Citrix, I say go for that, but definitely Citrix Casting. It's what sets it apart, right? It gives you so many great abilities in your organization, and it will make you change the way your users are working. And that's going to be fun, just exploring that. A few tips. Default password is admin. You don't have to Google that anymore. It makes sense, but still, something I had to Google. Another thing I found out, if you plug it in for the first time, there is no way configuring your Wi-Fi. It's somewhere hidden, really far away. If you hit Ctrl-Alt-W, it will show you the Wi-Fi configuration. Unless you use Ethernet, but I tend to rely on Wi-Fi. Again, Ctrl-Alt-S, shows relevant information. Keep that in your mind. By default, the screensaver is set, so it will blank after a few minutes. I always set it to 0. To me, it's not a device that should go to blank. Remember to use full H.264. Disable the backdoors. Okay, there are backdoors like the web page, secure shell, the port 5555. Please, if you're using it in production, set it to secure setting. And this one, unfortunately, sometimes is necessary because you want to go to factory default or because it's bricked. If it doesn't work anymore, if you really have to go back to factory default, when you power it on, hold Control and Shift until you see a question saying, do you want to revert back to factory default? Okay, I hope you'll never need it, but in case you do, this is really interesting. And we'll be sharing slides afterwards, so no need to write these things down, but these things really help me through. There are more shortcuts that you can use, like creating screenshots, which is fun as well. Logging stuff. I'll send this out for reference. Joe, did we get any questions?
We sure do. A few of them relate over to licensing. So let's talk about first any time frame for on-prem Zen Mobile getting the management capability. And I have a feeling this is not a good answer.
No, my answer was correct in that we're not bringing the management features of Zen Mobile to the on-prem version. It's for the cloud version, at least not to my knowledge. There's an on-prem solution through Stratodesk, which someone mentioned is free. That's true as far as I know. So yeah, there's an on-prem management solution which you can use. Ingmar, I didn't actually see anything you said the whole presentation. I was answering questions the whole time. So I'm not sure if he showed the Stratodesk piece to it. So there is an on-prem solution, but the Zen Mobile stuff is cloud-based. You know, a lot of these, in fact, a lot of the questions I'm seeing, you'll see me, I'll say, talk to ViewSonic and Computing or talk to Stratodesk. A lot of my answers have been that because this is not technically a Citrix product. I don't know if that was really made clear. You know, we are here supporting a partner product, and we've built a lot of the technology for this thing, but this is someone else's product, right? This is a ViewSonic product, this is an Computing product, and a Stratodesk product. So that's why a lot of my questions have kind of said, you know, a lot of the Imprivata ones, especially, there was like 3 or 4 Imprivata questions. We get Imprivata because the operating system is Stratodesk is No-Touch OS. They've been doing, you know, a thin client operating system for a very long time, and they've have Imprivata as a part of their operating system. So a lot of those questions can be answered by just looking at the this thin client operating system that the Workspace Hub is built on. What happened here, what's special about the Workspace Hub, is that we went to Stratodesk and said, hey, we'd like to build a thin client based on the Raspberry Pi because we want to hit a price point. That's the, you know, this $100 price point. And so we worked with them to port their operating system to the ARM-based architecture of the Raspberry Pi. So yeah, those aren't me trying to, you know, shoot down questions or anything else. I mean, literally, this is a partner product. So some of these questions are best answered by the partner. And sorry, in that vein, you know, why are we interested in it? Because we're all about workspace. I mean, if any of you guys have watched the stuff from Synergy, we're trying to build the future of the workspace, which we look at as a very cloud-based solution. So this thing is, from an internal Citrix standpoint, this is really about selling the cloud workspace for us. So that's why, you know, some of these, you know, might not be popular answer to say, you know, we're not doing this for on-prem. It does work as a thin client on-prem. You can still do cloud. Like I said, it was a platinum licensing. I had answered that incorrectly earlier. But you know, why Citrix is really behind this is because we're about the workspace of the future, and this thing is really what we're using to drive that message of what does that workspace look like. And you're going to continue to see iterations of what this thing looks like within that Workspace Hub product over the years to come. So, you know, we're about, you know, showing off the workspace and getting people excited about that workspace. This is not, from a Citrix standpoint, this is not the end-all be-all thin client, right? We Dell, iGel, HP, I mean, we have a lot of thin client vendors out there. So if you're looking for something that, you know, some person was asked, can I do dual monitor within the same box so there's no cable? No, you can't. But there, you can get an HP, you can get an iGel, you can get a Dell. There are plenty of other devices out in the market that can answer that for you. This device just doesn't happen to be it. So just keep in mind, this is typically called like a flagship device. So you think of when I presented this at Synergy, and I know I'm out of time, so I'll go quickly here. I talked about how Google put the Pixel out there because they wanted to show off what Android should look like. And they created these groundbreaking features when they did that. Microsoft is doing that with Surface for Windows 10. We at Citrix wanted to partner with someone like Google partnered with, I think Huawei was their first one to build that Pixel device. You know, we partnered with Computing with ViewSonic to build a flagship device. Now, our hope is that this thing can be useful in a lot of environments, but by no means do we think it's useful for every single environment out there, right? There are reasons, and we have plenty of other partners building clients to handle every single need that's out there. So yeah, this is meant to be a kind of the cloud-focused world. So I just want to, you know, reiterate that. And I see more questions. I'm going to answer all these, Ingmar, if you want to keep going.
Yeah, actually, we are out of time, and in respect for everyone's time, I want to wrap up, but there are definitely a few additional questions, and I know that these will be answered, and Stephanie's going to talk about, they'll be posted onto my CUGC. But thank you, everybody, for attending. This has been it's been informative, hopefully for you as well, and great information. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time today, Ingmar and Gunnar. I appreciate you being on those questions. I know there were a lot, and that was a busy job. And Joe, thank you for kind of weeding through those and picking some out to ask aloud. I know that's also a big job because there was a lot of interest and a lot of questions. As Joe mentioned, we will post the Q&A transcript in the forum. I put a link in the chat window for you. So you'll also get that same link in an email tomorrow with the recording link. So just check back at mycugc.org. We'll put everything out there, things that weren't answered today or things that were just answered in the chat. You know, we'll make sure you have access to that. And I also have put in the chat a link to a survey. It's quite short and it's anonymous and it's just for CUGC. We like to get your feedback on our webinars. And finally, the last link out there is to our events calendar, so you can check out your next local meeting and our upcoming webinars. And I know, Joe, I think you have a Tampa meeting on Friday, along with Switzerland and Nashville. So busy week. And of course, tomorrow is our day-long event here in New York. I'm actually up in New York today for that, for our Northeast Excel event. It's going to be awesome. So be sure you check out our calendar because we always have something going on. And finally, just a reminder to follow us on Twitter at myCUGC. We are busy out there as well, so love to have you follow along out there. All right, thanks again. Thanks, Ingmar. Thanks, Gunnar. Thanks, Joe. Really, really great stuff today. Maybe we can have you back if there's more to cover.
Of course.
Thank you for organizing this. It was great.
All right, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you all at mycugc.org again soon. Bye.